to kick everything off, I think just going back to where we were in February, I think it was March, sometime, where we had this initial discussion. We were going to do the joint community meeting in Inglewood that obviously got canceled due to the COVID pandemic. And since then, I think maybe this proposal got a little bit off track on our end, and now trying to wrangle it back together and get the application ready. I think at this point, I know that Councilwoman Benedict is planning on having a community meeting on Thursday about it. And after that, I think we'll move to do the application pending as long as all the council members are okay with that. So I guess at this point, I'll turn it over to Lisa to describe the timeline from that. And if there's any questions from the council members or any discussion that the council members would like to have, they're free to do so as well.
Hi, everybody. So typically with a large area, either zone change or application of an overlay like this, we like to try to coordinate the schedules in such a way that we can utilize dual signs and notices, meaning that the signs and notices would be for both the planning commission meeting as well as council. We have found that that will tend to cut down on confusion. It sort of puts all of the information out there at the same time. It also, in something large like this, where the department is responsible for posting the signs and preparing and mailing the notices, being able to do it in such a way that we can just have one means that we can also save some money, which is good. And my team is only out posting signs one time as opposed to twice. With that said, something like the urban zoning overlay expansion, the last large one that we had was in Councilmember Roberts' district. One thing that we have found helpful with something like this is we do have a hotline number at the planning department. And so for somewhat complex cases like this, or ones that impact a large number of properties, we can actually record a message that explains what the change would do. We can include that phone number on notices and signs. Excuse me. We can include that phone number on the signs and the notices, and so people can call that to get additional information. We can also set up some information on our website so that people can view those. What we find is we get a lot of calls on something that covers a large area like this. Excuse me. We get a lot of calls, and so having sort of the number set up can help us to manage that volume. So the last one, like I said, we had was in Councilmember Roberts' district, and that's how we handled it. We set up we did dual signs and notices and set up the hotline number. So looking at the scheduling, we sort of have to back into what date they get filed. The next bill filing deadline that we have is in July, but that won't work. We would have to end up, okay, so if we filed the bill in August, on August 21st, it could be on the second planning commission meeting in September, and that would track for October public hearing at council. So that's one potential schedule. If that's probably the fastest we could move it. if it needs more time, it can also be shifted a month to file in September, go to the second October meeting at the Planning Commission, and then public hearing in November. And so there are a couple of different options, but those are sort of the two potential timelines. And I'm happy to answer any questions should you all have. I'm going to mute myself now and just open it up if anybody has any questions, or if Matthew, you want to add anything.
This
Sorry.
Sorry, Matt. No, hi everybody. Good morning. So back in January, the newly formatted Maplewood Neighborhood Association had a meeting. There were less than 30, more than 20 people there. And we discussed this on the agenda, did the pass out of what it would do. We had a lot of talk about sidewalks, the benefit of sidewalks, but at the same time, a realization of right away. And just because you want a sidewalk doesn't mean you want to give up your front lawn, so that kind of thing. There has been some concern about public parking in neighborhoods, and petitions to get neighborhood only parking signs up in certain areas, some of that discussion. So if we were to give information out to the general public in writing, I think that it would be prudent to also include steps to do that, because that's been the only conversation that the District 8 side of this story has had, because we're protected by that train track, and everyone kind of is aware of the fact of all the things that could and should happen on Gallatin Pike. Things are already happening, Gallatin Road, wherever it is. But I think to answer the question before it's asked would include having information about, I think, the overall question, which is, if we do this and require less parking and more density, they're just going to park on my street. So how do we protect that question? And Brett's had more experience in that than I have, but that seems to be the only thing that District 8 folks are going to ask about.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I mean, Lisa probably remembers what all I went through with Russell Street. I'm not a fan of residential only parking typically, and what sort of happened in particular on Russell Street is sometimes you get large numbers of houses that, at least in my area town, do have alley access, often do have garages or parking pads. And so sometimes you would get to a point of having really only a handful of actually affected neighbors who more or less want a private parking space. So you can have tremendous amounts of political turmoil over parking. At the same time, I do sort of balance that with the idea, I kind of agree with you, Councilmember Van Rees, and this was also part of my argument for supporting a very limited version of residential permit parking on Russell Street, because that is, you are right, that a lot of folks in Nashville are going to drive if they can, and the path of least resistance is just to park back in the neighborhood, and sometimes to a level that causes trouble. The main caveat that I want everyone, I think certainly the council members, to understand is that we today still have 4.5 staff members who do all parking enforcement for the county, and they go home at 4 p.m. And so just, I think it's really important to be realistic with our constituents if we do have that discussion, that the odds of getting parking enforcement are close to zero. And that, like so many other things, you'll have like a hotspot over here, or over there, or the other place, that those limited numbers of staff are going to go to one place or the other. So particularly if you have a restaurant use, and they tend to park in the evening once COVID is over, there will not actually be any enforcement for residential permit parking. Mayor Briley's plan for his parking modernization plan would have actually included staffing. The private vendor would have provided staffing that would have helped for that, but that plan did not move forward. And I don't know that that has really come. I have read the memo from Ms. DeMassimo about the new proposed plan, but I don't know that that plan actually includes staffing either. So I just say all that to sort of be realistic with folks, that you can sort of take an argument that putting up the signs about residential only parking will discourage people from parking on the street. I haven't necessarily found that to be true. And so it's just an important thing to be realistic with our constituents about. So that's all. Creighton Avenue, that's not my little tiny piece of the pie. That's not going to be an issue for my folks necessarily in that little piece of the neighborhood that I have. The question that I did want to ask though is for Councilmember Benedict. Is the community meeting that you're having, is that part of the Inglewood Neighborhood Association meeting? And if so, if I did have folks that are on that little piece of Scott Avenue and Creighton, are there instructions where they could, maybe learn more about that proposal at that meeting?
Yeah, thanks so much. And you guys, I'm really sorry. I had a videotape a showing in Cookville this morning, so I'm in the car. But I'm listening to every word. Can you hear me okay? Sean, can you give me a thumbs up? Okay, cool. So certainly mine is the largest portion of this, so I want to make sure that we, that my folks are taken care of. Brett, the simple answer to your question is I've alerted the South Inglewood Neighborhood Association, and they've shared this. Let me back up. Thursday's meeting, I'm hijacking the Inglewood Neighborhood Association meeting to present this. It's one of the 3 things on their agenda. Lisa and Matt at least is planning to join me on that. Maybe Lisa just to help them. We've got some overlays in the area that I know people are going to be really concerned about. How does this impact them? I've already communicated with them that it doesn't. Nonetheless, they'll want to hear that from us in front of a group. This went out in my newsletter over the weekend on Saturday with instructions that it was going to be held at Inglewood Neighborhood Association Zoom meeting this Thursday. South Inglewood Neighborhood Association pushed it out. I did not get it to Rosebank neighbors just because that's too far back in my opinion, Brett. But I certainly could get it to Chris if you think that'd be helpful. But the overlay, the big concern for folks in my district is going to be, are we urban or are we not urban? So South Inglewood and Rock City, where we have the horseshoe around for the UZO, it goes up Riverside Drive and then it goes south to almost to Creighton, or actually to Creighton, and then it goes up Gallatin Pike to Lytton, just past Lytton Avenue. So that horseshoe, at a minimum, I want to fill that in, and I want to go up Gallatin on it as well. If we need to cut out all the rest of the area, which, in my opinion, has become urban and is becoming more urban, I think we should get out in front of it and require the sidewalks that this will trigger by putting in the UZO, and I think that there should be consensus for it. The challenge is going to be the folks on Brush Hill and in North Inglewood, where the lots are different and that we excluded from the UZO. Those folks are going to be anxious about what's heading their way. They want to keep Inglewood suburban, and so any sense that it's going to become more urban there may be met with resistance. So I want to be prepared for that. I think the streets that are up against Gallatin Pike will have similar concerns about parking. If somebody builds something at the corner of Sunnymead and Gallatin, where the old church was that burned down, and it's vacant lot now, if somebody were to build something there under the UZO with limited parking, there simply is no room on Sunnymead for any street parking, let alone any overflow parking. So those types of concerns are real, and I want to make sure that we address them on Thursday night if they come up. I guess that's that's what I've got to share. I don't know if I answered any questions or whatnot, but I'll stop there.
Thank you, Councilmember Benedict. So just to be clear from my perspective, so has South Inglewood already received an update on this, or are they also on Thursday, or are they joining Inglewood for this?
They're joining the Inglewood meeting for this.
Okay.
Brandon and Joe pushed it out to their mailing list
Yeah.
after Saturday when mine went out.
Okay, that's perfect, because a lot of times Creighton sort of is, it's not really Eastwood, you know, because it's cut off by the railroad tracks. So sometimes they kind of join in with South Inglewood. So that's perfect. They may already know, but I'll try to reach out to those folks and make sure that they know as well. And I'm not certain how far out your expansion area goes. Definitely Brush Hill is not urban. Definitely. But yeah, for that area in South Inglewood, you know, as you know so well, I mean, there's just been such, it's unfortunate this is kind of happening a little bit too late, like our sidewalk bill is a little bit after the fact, but we have had such an increase in buildings there in the South Inglewood area, and more folks out walking, even on Straightway Avenue and some of those streets, than used to be the case. So even though we're a little bit behind the curve, I really agree with you that we need to get everything that we can towards sidewalks, even if it is just the requirement of fee contributions. I think that's going to be crucial to getting more sidewalks into that South Inglewood area.
Thank you for that, and that definitely was the goal that I had, you know, for this when I began to review the UZO. Like, why is it not right there? I will say on the North Inglewood side, those folks want sidewalks and are complaining about it, and we follow the lot density there. And as the lots get bigger, we excluded that from the UZO and made it just one parcel in from Gallatin. However, you know, the folks from RD and I think Riverwood is where this stops. And I can understand the folks on Riverwood saying we're still too suburban and we don't want to be urban. But I think what we need to do is make it clear to them that you want sidewalks very badly, and this will help you get them in the fastest way possible. So that's, you know, that's my argument for those folks. But Lisa and Matt, I want to make sure that we're prepared for whatever arguments are coming our way. Like, what is the number one reason? Or what is, we know parking. What is the number two reason why my folks should or would oppose this? And how do we plan to address it?
I mean, one of the things that we often, when we're having these conversations, the impact on actual residential zoning is minimal. The impact on R and RS zoning is minimal. A couple of things that it does do, something that it does do besides trigger more sidewalks is it actually places a cap on height. And so right now, if you're outside of the UZO and within R and RS districts, the zoning code says that your height is limited to 3 stories. That's it. There's no feet, there's no maximum, it's just 3 stories. That's it. If you're within the UZO, it actually gives you a foot height. And so there's a little bit more of a understanding of sort of what you can expect in regards to heights on 1 and 2 family, what's permitted. So it sort of nails that down a little bit more. Other than that, the impacts on 1 and 2 family, it doesn't change parking for 1 and 2 family. You still have to have the same amount of parking. It doesn't really change anything else for 1 and 2 family. And so the impacts are minimal, I would say, for 1 and 2 family, except for the sidewalk trigger. The primary impact is on commercial properties, of which the majority of this area is 1 and 2 family. And so it's really limited in regards to its application to commercial properties in this, if this application moves forward. But that's where the majority of the impact is felt. And it's primarily with reduction in parking. Also, some different standards for the A districts. For instance, if you are within a mixed use A district, your build to line may change. So for instance, it might be a 0 to 15 build to if you're in the UZO, a 0 to 80 if you're outside of the UZO. If you're outside of the UZO, you're allowed to have parking in front, at least one bay of parking in front of a commercial. If you're in the UZO, you can't do that. So it pulls building up a little bit closer. It shifts parking to behind or beside buildings. And so those sorts of, it's not only that there might be a reduction in parking. It's also that there are some added design benefits that make a building more pedestrian oriented, more publicly facing, as opposed to pulled back off of the street. Does that make sense? I mean, I think that when we're sort of talking about it, we try to sell what some of those benefits are. And so you sort of get rid of the parking that's in front of buildings. It pulls them up closer. You're shifting sort of the design, the urban design of it.
Yep, that's excellent information. Thank you for that. I think then, so I don't think that we'll see much of this, but someone's initial reaction was they're gonna put these buildings up against the curb, and you're gonna be hitting your head on the building while you walk down the sidewalk, right? So it's just as an FYI, what I know we hear these crazy things all over town, but I think we want to make sure that we understand. And what was in my email, which I'm glad to forward to you, to this whole group, is what was in my email was the streetscape, the new tree bill that just was passed. The making sure that people know that there's the buffer, and then the sidewalk, and then that the trees will be in that buffer, and so helping them understand how wide that is. So I don't know if when we are on that Zoom call, if we have a graphic of what that sidewalk would look like. Not obviously the one on Gallatin, but an example elsewhere to help them understand that that would happen. That would be helpful. And then, I think I don't see any reason why they wouldn't want this, especially since the majority of my district is residential. This is only impacting the Gallatin Pike corridor, which I think we should all agree is urban now, and certainly up to Briley Parkway. So I can't imagine why anybody would be against it. They just want to understand what it is.
Yeah, and I would even venture to say that in another council term, it'll extend even past Briley Parkway. We'll see. But I had a question for Sean. We share Maynard, and the Maynard Iverson Neighborhood Association is not, it sort of exists but doesn't exist, as you're well aware. And I haven't heard any request for additional conversation about it, but they were given information about it. And the only concern was the parking. Have you heard, because for those on the call that are not aware, Maynard is literally one side of the street 8 and one side of the street 5. Have you heard from Maynard or down your nook on this at all?
I have not. We expanded the UZO up through, I think in the last term, for the end of the last term, we expanded it up through Gallatin, I think it was, and covered a bunch of the lower half of East Hill, or up to Trinity, and through East Hill. We asked a lot of questions. I think Anthony Davis was kind of helping us understand a little bit better about what it meant for the neighborhood. Ultimately, the concerns that I heard were, with all of the 2-on-1 builds that had been happening up there, there was already a lot of crowding for the street parking. And as others have said on this call, we're blessed to have Grimies in that neighborhood. But with Grimies often comes huge influx of street parking. So, I mean, I think that the issues that people have are already there, and I don't think that this will necessarily negatively drive those issues. This particular expansion of the UZO would necessarily drive those issues much more. And I think there are some benefits there. So the East Hill Neighborhood Association has not met in months. So I need to, make sure to engage with them and make sure that everybody's aware of this and try to answer any questions people have. We obviously haven't been meeting due to COVID, and we've talked about doing a Zoom meeting or something, but have not done that yet.
I think it'll be really helpful if is the INA meeting, the Zoom meeting, did they record those, Emily?
I'm sorry, I was cutting out here in the middle of nowhere. Nancy,
And
I missed the question.
Yeah, I was wondering if Thursday's meeting will be recorded. 'Cause as you know, I have my own zoning meeting at the same time, so I'm just wondering if the INA meeting will be recorded.
No, it will not be. But you don't need to be there, Nancy. I don't think that there's anybody from your side of the street, from what I can tell.
Hey, Emily, what would you think about the possibility of me pointing some of my East Hill folks toward that INA meeting, since this will be discussed pretty thoroughly there? What day is that? Tell them about it.
Yes, this Thursday at 7 p.m. And what I can do is forward that email. It's just my newsletter. There's no, I can just forward you my newsletter. You can find it on Twitter or Facebook technically, but I don't see any reason why that would be deliberation. So I can forward that to you guys if you'd like. Or better yet, I'll send it to Matt. Matt, will you send it to him?
Okay. Well, what I'll do is I'll sort of let folks know that that INA meeting is happening, and this will be discussed thoroughly there. And then if the East Hill folks want to have call a Zoom meeting, then I'll be happy to work with them on that and host that with them.
Lisa, what's the deadline to get this application turned in? I know you ran through it, but I missed the date.
I'll jump in since oh, there's Lisa.
Sorry, so we, the deadline is for these types of applications, it's sort of not necessarily follows the exact submittal deadline. Because the process is just different, because we're trying to coordinate between two different days. But if the goal is for it to be on the end of September Planning Commission meeting, then we really need the information by next week. We can usually push that out just a little bit more. It just takes us some time to get everything entered into our system with a large geographic area like this. We have to work with IT, get it batched in. There's a lot of technical stuff that has to be done to get everything entered into the system. So we really, the submittal deadline for September 24th is August 12th. If we push it out a month, the deadline for October 22nd is September 9th.
Brett, based on your experience, so I have my meeting on Thursday. It really would be the last meeting before we officially file this. Do you feel like that's going to be enough time for my folks to digest this? And I know you know the neighborhood is why I'm putting you on the spot. I know you have no answer. I will hold you to no answer, but just generally speaking, what's the neighborhood timeline that the neighborhood is comfortable for? Because I don't want them to feel like I'm trying to shove something through, because I'm not at all.
I mean, I would say go for it. Go ahead and file it. And if we need to extend it further after it's already filed, we can do that. I mean, this is just pretty. Um, to your point, I mean, everyone calls us every day and they want sidewalks. Well, they don't want to give up 9 feet of their yard. But that is what we always come down to, is everyone wants a sidewalk until it is actually coming through their yard, and then they will, get all lawyerly on you. Um, but this is this is in keeping with the goal of getting sidewalks in areas where they were never constructed and are desperately needed, and this will help to trigger that. Even in terms of, again, I'm not familiar with all of the dimensions of the expansion in your area, but once you cross Straightway from District 6 into 7 and you start going up Gallatin, even if the concern is that folks on Gallatin are not going to provide enough parking, large numbers of those parcels are like the YMCA has a huge parcel of that frontage. I mean, you really sort of have to get from the abstract down to, are people concerned about very particular parcels, I think. And I'm not really sure that there are that many parcels in play on our side of Gallatin um, that are going to have the kind of development that people are worried about. Because again, like YMCA's got the Margaret Maddox Y has a huge amount of that frontage. Obviously, Lytton School and the library, Inglewood Library, and all that. So, it would really again come down to, if people are worried about parking overflow, there actually aren't that many parcels where that is likely to occur anytime soon. And I think even the one that you mentioned on Sunnymead, has the development plan been submitted for that one? I thought I saw something coming through the BZA.
They have not. He pulled back on it and is trying to sell it now.
Oh,
So which he was kind of doing anyway. He was trying to get some plans pushed out there, but people were receptive to his plan.
yeah.
I think just for whatever reason he decided to put it on the market.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I mean, I think there are like a few of those maybe, but I just don't see massive developments going in. I mean, kind of what I hear from some of our commercial brokers, such as Chad Grout, who likes to be on Twitter, who I've known for many years and know and respect him. But, I just don't see massive developments going on relatively small parcels. So the ones that, at the same time, a lot of the larger parcels are either Metro owned or Metro or MNPS, or things like the Margaret Maddox Y, which already controls that, a lot of that. So I think that it's possible to, if people have a specific concern about a specific parcel, we can look at that in more detail. But the larger goal of this is to get a couple of things that the community's always said. Lisa talked about at least a fixed height limitation on properties that happen not to be in an overlay, and then getting additional sidewalk requirements, including the new tree requirements that you referenced. I mean, I feel like that from our side of the house, that that should be supported by the community, other than maybe a couple of one-offs. So I would say,
Yeah.
there will, barring barring major objections on Thursday, which it's kind of hard for me to imagine that. Barring that, I would say go ahead and file it.
Great. Let me jump in. It's now almost 10:40, so I promised this would be a 30-minute meeting for Lisa, so she could get on with her other 20 billion calls today. So let me, I'll just wrap it up real quick. And I think Lisa and I had been talking. Sorry, go for it. Go for it, Nancy. I'm sorry.
Sean, if you're going to invite East folks to the Inglewood meeting, then I feel like I need to invite Maplewood folks to the Inglewood meeting. They're going to interject their own questions that are not related. I just think that if we need meetings, then we should have our own meetings, and let Emily have the concentration on that side of the road, if you will. I don't want to muddy the waters for her because I know that particularly your East End, I mean, they get fired up, and I don't want them to kind of sort of hijack the INA meeting because they may. So I just want you to think about whether or not you need to have your own separate one after we hear the feedback from Emily. That was my suggestion.
And if Sean, if that's the direction you decide to go, the email that I'm asking Matt to forward to you guys today, feel free to steal shamelessly from that email in regards to what it means. You know, if not that you don't know already, but if it's already written up, why write it? My perspective. So I'll get that to you just probably in the next 45 minutes.
Hey guys, I'm sorry. Matt's going to wrap up. I've got to actually hop on another call. But I told Matt that he and I would work on expanding this sort of skeleton summary that we already have to include some of the additional information. But I'm going to hop off, and I will see you all tonight. Not really, but I'll be there. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you.
Okay, so wrapping this up, I think the consensus is we'll shoot for, unless, Councilman Parker, did you have anything you wanted to say? Oh, you muted again. Okay. So just wrapping it up, I think the consensus I determined is we'll shoot for the August submittal for the September Planning Commission, barring major pushback at one or more community meetings that are held, if we have time to hold them. And then I guess worst case scenario, if there is pushback after submittal, it can always be deferred and amended. And so we'll look at, and I believe you all have a copy of the proposed area. I know, Councilman Withers, I apologize, yours isn't shaded in, but it's a hole in the bottom of it. And so if we need to make any changes to that following the meetings, we can certainly do that before we submit. And then we'll just get it going. And hopefully by Thanksgiving, we will have a new expansion of the UZO. So with that, if there's any final thoughts before we end this, let me know. And otherwise, I'll let Charda know we can end the meeting.
I appreciate the call out for Turkey Day. I hadn't even put that connection together. Thanks, Matt.
Great.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day. See you tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.media.